Welcome to our first Steam Deck gameplay performance video. I'm going to do these about once a week with requests, just other games that I own, or stuff that I receive from publishers. Amazingly enough, that's what we're doing with today's video. So, here's how these are going to go. We'll briefly talk about the game in question. We'll go over performance and setting tweaking to get the best performance, or at least the most optimal without losing all visual integrity. And then we'll go over battery life. To begin, we're going to go into the game Trailout. This is a demolition racing game in the same vein as Wreckfest. You do races and demolition derbies with wrecked up cars, with the goal of destroying everybody else to either get past them and win the race or be the last man standing. The fun part is that this is PC exclusive for now. It just came out today, but it's coming to consoles including the Switch next year. Meaning sometime in the future we'll come back to this when the Switch version comes out. And before we dive in, it's also worth noting that these tests were done before release day. So if we got a day one patch today, that performance may not reflect what the game is right now. But let's go in and dive into performance. The unfortunate thing about Trailout is that in its current state, you're not going to be getting a constant 30 FPS or above no matter what combination of settings you use. At least not unless you stick only to the normal racing events. Let's go into a bit more details. By default, Trailout sets your graphics options to about medium overall. When you're in a normal race without constant demolition, this is fine. It'll stay around the 30 to 40 FPS range, and you will very rarely, if ever, see the frame rate go below 30. And if you drop it down to low settings, that'll spike up, giving you stuff in the 40s and 50s. But do note, this is only the case for racetracks that don't have a whole lot going on in the environment. Tracks like the farm, where there's constantly bales of hay, stacks of tires around the racetrack, those will still drop down into the 20s even on low settings. But demolition is where the cracks begin to form. When you're in a derby and continually wrecking into environments and vehicles, the frame rate will rarely be above 30 FPS. Even if you use the Steam Deck's forced 30 FPS performance toggle, the default medium settings will stay in the 20s for quite a bit, and the more crazy wrecking will drop it down to as low as 16. This means you've kind of got to change your graphics options every time you go into a new event. When you go into demolition, you got to go into options and put everything down to low and make sure anti-aliasing is turned off because it drops the performance down even more. You could also turn VSync off at the bottom of the graphics menu to get a little bit of a difference, but I would keep motion blur on as that actually keeps it a little bit more stable. These lower settings will mostly keep it from dropping below 20 and semi-stable, but it will regularly go into the mid-20s. Now there are other options for graphics like dropping down the render quality, and this will improve some situations but not others. If you lower it down to, say, about 69% to 75%, it looks kinda but not terrible. And on this particular track right here, it'll make the frame rate great up in the 40s. But if you go on to the busier tracks with a lot of environments and destructible objects, you're still gonna get those drops in the 20s. Not as often, but you'll still get them. Now I consider this playable, but you gotta be willing to deal with frame rate in the 20s. Maybe they'll optimize the game better in the future since this game did just come out today. But for now, it's gonna be playable on the Steam Deck with a lot of frame rate drops. And then we get to battery life, which is kinda standard, pretty okay. This is one of those games where the 30 FPS lock on the deck is very useful. If you keep the FPS as high as you can, you're gonna get about 2 hours max out of Trailout. With maximum brightness, it's going to be more like an hour and 40-45 minutes, and with the brightness down lower, it'll be a bit above 2 hours. But once you do the 30 FPS lock mode for the deck, it'll spark up a good bit. More so in menus and cutscenes, but in gameplay, it'll raise the battery life from 2 hours to about 2.5 to 3 hours. Not a massive increase, but it tracks with gaining about 30 to 40 minutes like with some other games I've tested. And that's it for the video. I might get more detailed on things as we get these different videos out more, but this was kind of a test run, so we'll see how things go. But as far as Trailout goes, I probably wouldn't recommend it for deck users right now, at least until it gets better optimized. It's playable, but with a lot of FPS drop hiccups that'll be happening anytime you're in demolition, which is really what these Wreckfest-like games are all about. It'll be interesting to see the game's future, especially considering there is a Switch version confirmed to be happening. But that's all I got for you today. As always, thank you for watching, and have a great day.